Okay, so I'm going to start. This is me. I am from Huacho City, Peru. Of course, I work in target test preparation and I'm also a Ruby Peru organizer with with Katia, that is one member of Women No Binary also. I've been working with Ruby and Ruby on Rails since 2019, and I consider myself a crazy cat lady. Okay, let's talk about what says Mars about metaprogramming. It says that as developers we have a lot of tools, and one of them that we are provided is the metaprogramming. So every time that we use it, we must be careful about what we are doing with that. So let's start with the M word. When we read the book, we say that the first meaning about this is writing code that writes code. That is the easiest, the simple definition for this. But for when we continue reading the book, we see something that how how are construct the things based on languages. Here we have, for example, how Java is created. When we create our code in Java, we have to use a compiler, and that compiler create another file that is going to be read by our virtual machine for Java, right? So when we go to this point, there is anything that we can do with our code. Is what is there. That's it. We can't change anything or even ask about what we have there. But when we talk about Ruby, that is mentioned as a runtime language constructor, we can create a class, for example, and then we can access to this class just as giving the asking about what it is. What is the object class? What are the variables, for example? And that is what is called different. For example, if we have here, for example, we have here the active record, how we mentioned it. And with this part, we are just reducing all the things that we have to do if we see the gray one screen. So this is an active record approach, as was mentioned, that only adding this, that is how we can create, make a title, and this is something that is different about the rest of languages. Because how Ruby knows in this case that our table has a title column or it has director column or extra columns if we have never told them about it. But one of the things that does active record base behind is just creating. That is what we call metaprogramming, and that this has been is made in a runtime. So this is how this could be without the active record approach. A lot of code, and we have to define the title, for example, a director, and then we have to assign the values about it. And this is what I was mentioned. Everything was made on runtime. That's what reduces a lot of time to recreate all the things here. So just thinking about what we have seen, we can omit the part that say writes code, and we can say that manipulates language constructs at runtime. So let's talk about the object model. When we talk about Ruby, we always have the opportunity when a class is created to open it again and add and also edit the methods that are created inside. For example, here we have the class integer, and we open that class. We include something extra, kind of $2 to add the dollar sign, and then we can call it in some of our new object classes to add it. This is something that is called monkey patch. But the problem is that sometimes if you don't know if we don't know what we are doing, we can that kind of break the code that is creating behind. Or we can change method use in other pieces of code, for example. Oh, so let's talk about the objects here. Those objects contains instance variables. If we remember, instance variables exist only when we assign, in this case, object has made is the instance for the of the my class, and there and if we can see methods are located in the class. But there is something that we need to see. If we call any string here, like ABC, we see that the class of that is a string. But if we ask about the class of the string, it actually answered to that method class. That what it shows us that it is still a class. Is kind of string is a new class. And if we continue talking about what is the superclass of string, it goes to object. And object, if we ask its superclass, it goes to basic object. And then if we go to superclass to basic of a basic object, it goes to nil, because basic object is the root of the Ruby class hierarchy. So if we talk about classes, we need to see that the class is a module, and everything is inheritance from the basic object. So there is here when I found a question, when do we use modules and when do we use classes if both are the same, if a class is a module also? Well, the thing is, in this book, the author recommends to use module when we are going to include it in someone else. For example, a calculator, you can add it in a class, or when you have to manipulate data and show it in a specific format. That is a way that we can use modules. But if we need to instance something, kind of, well, in my mind, I just think about if you want to instance a cat, for example, here you need a class to define its name or the weight or things like that. So returning to classes are just objects. If we create two objects, if we ask about his class, it goes to my class. But if it goes to his class, it's going to be class. And if we go asking about their super classes and go up and up, we can see we can see this tree that is called the inheritance tree. The ancestor change. So, for example, if we have a class and we have a child from that class, and we ask about their ancestors, we have the class, the initial class, the parent class, the object class that we showed before, and also it has the kernel and the basic object. And this is an example about if we have a module where we define a method and then we include it, and then we have a child that is inheritance form from C in this case, we have it in the tree image of the right, that the module is the include makes it that it is being called before the object method after the object method. So every time, for example, in this case, when we call my method, it first go to D, and then it see that it doesn't exist my method, then it goes to D, first to D, second to C, and then it goes to M until it finds it. And that is how it shows there. So next we talk about self. And here is just to mention that every line of Ruby is executed within an object. So the current object is called self. So it's only one object calls the self, and anytime given, an instance variables and methods are called on self. And also in class or module definitions, the role of self is taken by the class or the module. We are going to see something like that later. So this is something that is really cool in Ruby. It's when we can create or we can call a method that if we don't even know its name. That is one of the magics that comes with Ruby while the code is running. But we need to be careful about the method send because it can call private methods too. So the other methods that we can see here is when we can define them dynamically. For example, in this case, we have an array of cats. If we can create a method just defining them by their names. And here, actually, that is how we could send, for example, the column names. Well, I was looking if that it was how ActiveRecord was, but it doesn't. But it's kind of this that could be in an easy way. So another thing that we can find here is when we have the method missing. Method missing it's a method that is in the basic object, in the module basic object. And here is when we can make something special, because if we talk about, for example, in this example, if we call for a knock now method, that is the error that is going to show us because it's undefined method that is showing us that error. So what if we open the method missing and we add our extra lines of code to manage this kind of error? And that is how we can add an extra pieces of code. And then that is how can we, the next time that we talk, sorry, the next time that we ask for talk simple, we are going to make our modified code. So this is the last part that I'm going to check. That is, I think this is the most important that I could discover in this book because it took me kind of 1 week to read page by page, I think 3 times, because I just was a little bit curious to understand this concept deeply. For example, when we create 2 objects and then we can create a method, a simple method for one of the objects and then return itself. That is what is the easiest way to explain simple singleton methods. We add a method to a single instance of an object that in this case is str1, string 1. What it is something that we already have seen in Rails, but we didn't know that we were using singleton methods. For example, in this case, we have the class user, we have a method, an instance method name, but then we have a singleton method called custom method. But there is another singleton method called another custom method. And one of the things that I discovered from this book is that this is the most sophisticated thing to to call a singleton method. So the next time that we see something like this, we know that, well, I finally know what it means. So, but the thing is, when we have a class, that is how is managed in this ancestor chain. We have the object, and its class is my class, and the superclass of this is object. But what happens? Well, I forgot to mention that my methods it's a method allocated in my class. So, but what happens when we have an inheritance? The inheritance first goes to the class to call the methods, but it doesn't find the method there. So it goes up following the ancestor change, and then it finds that it is in the C class. So that is when it is executed to show us the result. So, but what happens when we include a singleton class? For example, here we have a singleton method, and we have added to the object. And if we ask about the singleton class, it exists. And if we ask about the superclass of that singleton class, is D. So following just that, the ancestor change has changed this time. The object first go to the singleton class that is object, and then it goes up to D, and then it goes up to C, and that is where it finds a method. So this is a piece of code that I could find in the book that I didn't want to make my own diagram, so I made a copy paste. So this is specifically how are the classes really in Ruby. Every time that we create a new object, and remember the classes are objects too, a singleton class is created. It is hidden, but it exists. And that is here is when we have the change. First object goes to the class, the singleton class object, and then it goes to D to find a method, and then it goes to the singleton class to see where it goes and try to find all the things that here. That's why it took me like 1 week to understand all these, because I'm trying to translate all this diagram here. But at the end, I just realized that, well, also the author mentioned that metaprogramming is just programming. All the things that we have been doing behind Dynamically or new methods to create, it was just single programs code that we have been using behind, but we didn't realize about it. At the end, it's just, oh, well, the recommendations given by him is just try to make your code so simple. No, don't try to complicate things, because we have to remember that we are coding for humans. We are not coding for machines. We also try to make the things happy. That's why we choose, or personally choose, Ruby to as my main programming language. And that's it. Thank you.